Hey, it's Kevin McCarthy, and welcome to the Savvy Real Estate Investor Series. So, I get asked a lot about the business side of things and how to properly set your properties up. And really, it's going to be very personal for someone depending on their current portfolio, what's going on in their personal lives, if they have kids, if they have other things set up, what kind of assets they have. But let me kind of give you a few examples of things that you can do and the things that I like. So I hear some people will want to set up their rental property in what's called a living trust. Well, so a living trust, it can help you avoid probate in the event of your death because then it's just the trust owns the property. That can be somewhat problematic if you have a mortgage, though. Mortgage companies don't really like you to do that. So if you own the property outright, a living trust is a great option. But before you go jumping into moving a rental property into a living trust, make sure that you're not going to mess with things with your mortgage company and cause any problems there. The reason somebody would want to do that is because they want to protect their personal assets from a tenant potentially suing them for something. Most rental properties, your standard 3-bedroom, 2-bath house renting for $2,000 a month, the risk for a landlord being so negligent that they are sued to where it goes after their personal assets is extremely rare. So it may be more work than it's worth to set it up in a living trust. If you have a property, however, that could potentially, have issues with, let's say, flooding by it, or it's an older property that's at risk of certain things like asbestos that you haven't checked into, etc., you name it. Maybe you want to look at the living trust to kind of protect yourself, or at the very least put it in an LLC. LLC is the other way, to go about doing that. For most people, if you have one investment property, you can pretty well protect yourself with just getting some additional insurance, like taking out a $2 million umbrella policy and not bother with going the route of the living trust or the LLC. If you have multiple investment properties, however, you're probably going to want to set up a business entity for that, such as an LLC, because it's going to make it much more advantageous from a tax standpoint. If you are in business partnership with other people on the ownership of a property, you definitely want to set up a partnership LLC to make sure that ownership is established there and you can open up a bank account. That makes 100% complete sense to have the LLC, because then what happens when you have the LLC is you're going to file its own tax return. Basically, it has to file taxes on its own. And then any profits from that LLC are distributed or negatively reflected to the homeowners on a K-1 statement. That's where you file your taxes. The only reason I say it's not really advantageous if you just have one property and to protect yourself in another way is because that LLC is going to cost you $500 or $600 a year to file with a CPA, to have them file that business tax return every year. So you can probably find an insurance policy that is significantly cheaper than that for an umbrella policy in order to cover yourself from any potential liability. Because the umbrella policy is going to be cheap. It's really, really low risk on a standard investment property of something happening, because the tenant, let's think about this, they would have to prove that you were completely, grossly negligent in order to get any money out of you. that you were aware of some problem that caused them material harm in that property. So the likelihood is that anything that happens is going to fall on insurance. Another way to make sure and protect yourself in this instance is you make sure that your tenants always get liability. They always get insurance, renter's insurance, to cover themselves. Because your insurance policy, the landlord policy, doesn't cover any of the contents of the property. And it's limited in most cases to liability as well. So, for their own purposes, their injuries, stuff like that, and their things, make sure your tenants have an insurance policy in place. So, the basics, insurance policies that cover your property. You own one property, pretty simple. On your tax return, it's very simple as filing that investment property. Just you're simply going to do a P&L. If you, like I said, if you own multiple investment properties or you own properties in conjunction with other people, partnerships, you're definitely going to want to have an LLC and file a separate tax return in order to have a K1 statement. And if you really, really want to protect yourself, but before doing this, make sure you don't screw up things with your mortgage company because they don't like it. You can look at the living trust, but make sure you speak to somebody appropriately before you go messing around with that sort of thing. Now, on the business side of things, when you're looking at it from a longevity financial standpoint, when you set up the property in, let's say, an LLC, and all the rents are coming into that and being paid out of that property to the mortgage company after 12 months consecutively of showing that that business has paid the mortgage on there, you can go get another house. And that debt doesn't count in your debt to income anymore. You can offset it 100% because the business has paid for that mortgage for 12 months. So if you're looking at developing a strategy for long-term investing, let's sit down and have a conversation about your strategy. We can really look at the business side of it, what makes sense in your particular situation, your financial needs, what you can put into it, and where you want to go, and develop a plan for how you can accumulate some properties and remove those from your debt to income ratio so that you can continue to add more properties. Again, I'm Kevin McCarthy. Welcome to my Savvy Investor series, and I look forward to speaking with you. Peace.